Hello everybody, Benjamin Johnston here. So I hope you guys are all doing well right now during this whole quarantine business that we're in right now. And right now, I think this is a perfect time to have that escapism that we all need. And there are plenty of ways to have that escapism, whether it be movies, board games, video games. And video games is what I like to focus on for this one. And I think one of the best forms of escapism in video game form is the Uncharted series. For those of you that don't know what the Uncharted series is, it is a series of video games that are exclusive to PlayStation. So if you want to get your hands on it, you gotta own like a PS3 or a PS4. Ideally get a PS4 because then you can get like all the Uncharted games all on one system. They're essentially a series of action-adventure video games where you play as this treasure hunter named Nathan Drake, who is essentially the video game equivalent of Indiana Jones. And you take part in fun action set pieces, you solve a bunch of puzzles, and it's generally speaking a really fun adventure, which in my opinion, that counts for a really good escapism. So I was originally going to play Uncharted 4 on its own without really doing a video on it because I've never played the game before. But because the PlayStation Store was giving Uncharted 1, 2, and 3 for free in the Uncharted collection, I figured, yeah, you know what? I'll pick it up. And then I realized, you know what? I should do a video series on this. It just gives me an excuse to play through all the Uncharted games from 1 to Lost Legacy. And I also want to do a video on it, which is what I'm going to do for this. So Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, I've already played multiple times throughout, but 4 and Lost Legacy are going to be new experiences for me, so it'll be unique to see what I think of those games after playing 1, 2, and 3. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about the first game in the series, which is Uncharted Drake's Fortune. So in Uncharted Drake's Fortune, you play as treasure hunter, as I've said, Nathan Drake, and he is essentially trying to find the lost treasure of El Dorado, which is what his supposed ancestor Francis Drake was looking for. And he is joined by a beautiful and fun reporter named Elena Fisher and an old badass named Victor Sullivan, and they have to fight off against pirates, mercenaries, in order to get to the treasure before they do. Story-wise, it's not exactly original, but what makes this plot work so well is like the charm and personality of the main characters that you spend time with in this game and the games in the future. And a lot of credit has to be given to the voice actors who give so much life to these characters. In particular, Nolan North as Nathan Drake. Nolan North as Nathan Drake is the equivalent of Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark or Christopher Reeve as Superman. Like, it's very much one of those roles that was very much made for him, and I can't see any other actor taking on that role. Nathan Drake is a very funny, witty, and charming character, and he's a very big factor at what makes this series so compelling. Then you have the character of Elena Fisher, played excellently by Emily Rose. She's essentially a love interest throughout the majority of the series, and she works really well off of Nathan Drake, but they're not exactly the same character. You have Nathan Drake, who is essentially like a scoundrel, and then you have Elena Fisher, who is essentially more of a realist, but they have funny banter back and forth, and you can see why they would be attracted to one another. Also, she's a very beautiful character. Basically, she has like these eyes that are very expressive, and she's very much one of the more endearing characters of this series. And then you have Victor Goddamn Sullivan, probably one of the coolest old dudes in video games, and that includes Revolver Ocelot. He's essentially like a father figure to Nathan Drake, but he's also kind of a scoundrel also, so in the sense they work well off each other in terms of their banter. So Uncharted Drake's Fortune originally came out in 2007 for the PS3, and even though there are some games nowadays that have looked better in terms of graphical fidelity, it's still very beautiful to look at in this game. The lush, like, jungle green environment just really pops in this game. It also still has really good water effects, even by today's standards. So the gameplay in Uncharted Drake's Fortune is very much a mix of third-person shooting and puzzle solving, as well as having a lot of climbing sections in the game. These are nothing groundbreaking, but they're done very well in this game. And during the combat sections, you can choose between like a two-handed gun, which is like AK-47 or shotgun, and a one-handed gun, which is like a couple variations of pistols. I like that this is a game where you can't just stick to cover all the time. Sometimes the enemies will like advance on your position, and or like they throw a grenade at you and you have to get out there. So there's a lot of times where you have to move about in combat. So that's something I really enjoyed in this game. Though I will say the Uncharted sequels did improve on some mechanics from the first game that have not really been done the best way. For example, melee combat is something that is not handled ideally. Melee combat most of the time is a very risky situation for you to be in because one, you're out in the open, and two, it's a little time consuming to actually take people down with fisticuffs because when you're out in the open and you're getting shot at, it's not ideal to be like tapping the button for a long time to actually get the guy down. And you can do like a fast combo where you can take the guy down very quickly, but again, you have to press the buttons very quickly, and during a stressful combat situation, it's not exactly ideal. Also, grenade throwing is not exactly handled in the best way because you have to rely on the 6-axis on the controller, meaning you have to like tilt it to change the arc on your grenade throws. And during the middle of a hectic gun battle, it's not exactly the best thing to do during this time. So to break up the combat scenarios, you do have puzzles to solve in this game, and they are very engaging puzzles. I think one of the cool sections in this game is when you're going through this like underground sort of looking, I don't know if it's a city or a dungeon, but it's kind of within that realm. But essentially it acts like an obstacle course, and that was really fun to go through. Throughout the Uncharted series, there's also a treasure collecting element in this game, and basically you can go off the beaten path because the game is for the most part pretty linear, but you have these like little like hidden areas or bits in the environment that you can go to that you can collect treasure from. And it's kind of like a fun little game where it's like, okay, how many treasures can you collect in this playthrough? And I've played the Uncharted games quite a few times. Like I think I've played Uncharted 1 like 4 or 5 times, but I still haven't been able to get all the treasures yet. Ultimately, if you're looking for a fun video game equivalent to Indiana Jones, the Uncharted series is definitely one to go for. In comparison with the other games in the series, Uncharted Drake's Fortune does have a few mechanics that are not as well handled. But I will say if you want to get started on the Uncharted series, the first game is definitely a good one to start with. I mean, it is the first game and it's like the beginning of the whole saga essentially. So I would say pick it up if you want to get into this series. And I will say the Uncharted series is a very great reason to get a PlayStation console. Whether it's PS3 or PS4, it's worth it. Check out Uncharted Drake's Fortune. It is a really good time.